Hello everybody, welcome to the Q&A critique number 81. It is now 2015 UTC or 15 local time here, and we're here with the Let's Be for Artists edition and community doing a live stream digital art questions and answers event with our special guest today, Rudd. So Duncan Rudd is here connected with the voice chat. I'm super honored to have you connected today. To be honest, since this is a very small time thing, I was actually kind of expecting you to be very busy to do this. So your track record with this particular, your career has really spoke out to me, mainly because you've not only done one short film, you've done multiple, and you've also done commercials for big brands as well over the years, and you've been doing this with Blender, and you've also been running a channel concerning geometry nodes with high quality education and know-how, and you've done animation, done rigging, you've done lighting, and I assume a bit of everything. So I'm here to clarify exactly what you do, where you come from, and how where you're going with your work. So tell me a bit about yourself. We're all here to.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, and thank you for the kind words. Very flattering, but I don't really consider myself to be anything other than a hobbyist that's lucky enough to make a living doing this stuff as well. So in terms of education, I studied art and design after school. At university, I did graphic design, which it contained a specialism for TV and film. So my degree ended up being in TV and film. And then sort of after university, I got a job doing graphic design for like live sports events, doing the scoreboards and updating all that stuff. But I knew straight away that what I wanted to be doing was what all the cool guys were doing in the studio on the Unix workstations using Maya and 3ds Max, making the kind of title sequences and the more bespoke pieces. So I kind of would stay behind after work, going on the weekends, and if there was a spare machine, I would jump on and bug the senior artists to show me how to do things. Take the manuals home with me and read through them and before going to bed, things like that. And I think because it was a bit like the Wild West, we're talking sort of 25 years ago, and there weren't such kind of established best practices for the stuff that you kind of get taught nowadays. And I think that's probably why I ended up sort of becoming a bit of a generalist, really. You kind of had to know a little bit of everything just in order to get anything done.
That's right.
The kind of pockets of information were much more isolated and hard to kind of seek out. So you ended up sort of around the campfire exchanging little nuggets of precious information, and it gradually built up this dark art of being able to put an image on screen using 3ds Max version 1 or 2 or something like that. So I did that for a couple of years. I was doing title sequences down in London, back up to sort of Manchester area about 20 years ago now. Freelanced around Manchester pretty much since then, working for little studios around town on a really wide range of projects, to be honest. Lots of TV commercials, but then some longer stints doing animation for kids' TV series, rigging and animation. And that was really when I started to kind of glimpse the benefits of standardizing workflows a little bit more and having a pipeline that kind of smoothed over some of the rough riding that goes with this sort of guerrilla approach that I was taking up till then. So that was really beneficial. That was for a studio called Studio Liddell that are still around in Manchester. And yeah, since then I've been doing a lot more in the advertising space as far as professional work goes, working for advertising agencies to make commercials and kind of public awareness films. as well as obviously working on my own personal short film projects whenever I get a moment.
That's excellent. And it seems like throughout your career, like 20 years is quite a track record. I really enjoy and like to hear about, but I've noticed that you've been floating around through different types of software. So what's your principal standardized workflow that you have today?
It constantly changes, to be honest. I think because I freelance and I work at lots of different studios, you kind of you get used to hopping in and out of different softwares and different pipelines and whatnot. So you don't get too comfortable in any one package, I guess. Like I said, I started out on 3ds Max, moved over to Maya when I started doing more of the kind of production pipeline work. Got into Python scripting and all the kind of back-end tool development that Maya kind of makes available to you. And then recently, well, I guess I did look at Blender quite a while ago, and it was great for a couple of little things that I really needed. There was like a fluid simulator in Blender way back, and I couldn't do that kind of stuff in any other software. So I ended up using Blender a couple of times, but for whatever reason, it wasn't until geometry nodes came out that I kind of started seeing it on my timeline and getting really inspired by what people were doing. So kind of jumped on quite recently to Blender. Obviously Python sits in Blender as well, so a lot of the knowledge that I have from Maya is fairly transferable. But I do think it's important not to get too kind of fixed in a piece of software and thinking, oh, I need to press this button to do this. I think it's more beneficial to learn more of the broad concepts of a 3D software and what's actually happening under the hood, but also just art in general, and kind of not be a slave to a UI really. Kind of try and come in with a picture of what you want to create and choose the right tool for the job.
That's right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, I guess the production and the story is what really speaks out.
Yeah, it's
whatever gets the end result.
the
Right,
pixels and the sound is all you end up with. So however you get there doesn't matter at all. I'm scared stiff of things like games where the idea that someone could like look around the back of what you've made and realize how kind of unfinished it is from any other angle.
Yes, you can't hide things away behind the camera.
No.
That's right. I've had some experience working with both of those. The concepts of working for games and working for linear animation. I understand the differences there. They're quite large. So with your latest artwork that you've done, you've mentioned during your free time you've been working on a short film. So which one of all these that you have on your website, which one was the last one?
So the last one I finished was the Path, which is the third one down there. The Lobster film was also finished last year, and Deep Rooted, which is the one with the big tree, that's the one I'm currently working on. That's the one that's in production at the moment, and that one is the first one that I'm doing completely in Blender.
100%. That's looking absolutely beautiful already.
Thank you.
Yes,
There's a long way to go.
Yes, as I understand, these productions take a very long time. So when you talk about breaking up your pipeline and getting whatever tool that you need to get the job done, how much investment does it take to get your short film done? And do you work with others while you do it?
I tend to work predominantly on my own. The one thing I don't do is audio, so I have a guy, Max Brody. I'll shout out Max. He has a company called Nice Sound, and he does amazing sound design. And whenever he's not available for a project, I really miss him. So kind of lean on him heavily for support with the audio. But other than that, it's mainly myself. There's a few shots in the Path which a buddy of mine animated for me, just to get that one done for the deadline. But yeah, it tends to be just me. I have a 14-year-old daughter who's rapidly growing into an art director, and she sits behind me and goes, "No, not like that. Change that." So I guess I've got a boss in the making there.
Good. Quality's gone up ever since.
Well, yeah. That's the annoying thing. I can't really disagree because she's right most of the time.
It's excellent.
But I think in terms of the time investment, you've got to be really careful when you start one of these projects because, like you say, they do inevitably grow into a bigger thing than what you first conceptualize. You think, oh, that'll be quite simple. I'll set aside a little bit of time and work on that, and before you know it, you've got this kind of sprawling epic that you never intended to embark on. So I think that's one thing I've learned is if you actually want to get something finished, is to kind of really nail it down as much as possible on paper first or on an animatic, so that you're only building what you need and you're not kind of getting off into the weeds in terms of expanding the story and building assets that might look cool, but are going to add a month onto the schedule. Because at the end of the day, you've got an hour or two generally to work on these things, in and around work each day, and it means sacrificing other things. You've got to not go out every so often, or not watch a film, and if you want to keep making progress.
Yes, I've been there before.
Yeah, and I mean the ones you see on the website are the very few projects that have actually come to fruition. There's a hard drive absolutely full of projects that are not even half finished. Ones that I got all excited about and rushed into and started and lost my way with it and or just sort of fell out of love with it and found something else to distract me. So yeah, I think it's really important to make sure the idea that you have is one you're still gonna believe in 6 months or a year down the line.
6 months to a year down the line. So how do you know which project is worth your love and attention? Which ones do you discard and which ones really put yourself into?
I think that anything that's still kind of rattling around in my head after a couple of weeks from first thinking about it is worth committing to paper in terms of a storyboard and an animatic perhaps. And I think once you get to that stage, well, for me anyway, once I've been through that process, if I find that a real struggle to make it work on paper, that usually tells me it's worth kind of moving on. Not moving on with the project, but passing that one over. If I find, having done the animatic, that I still really like the idea and that it's working visually and I feel like it's achievable, because it's not really until that point that you actually can get a proper picture of the scope of the project, in terms of how big it's going to be to build and how much time's likely to be involved. So I think if you still feel good about it at that stage, you can proceed reasonably confidently that you've got something worth pursuing. And if at that stage you're already sick of it, it's a sign.
It's a sign that it's going to burn you out if you keep going.
Yeah, and it's good to have those, because sometimes you come back to ideas with a fresh perspective, or something reminds you of a thing you started years ago, and you kind of think, oh, I'll take another look at that with fresh eyes, and maybe you have a different way into it, and you can make things work that weren't working before. So I think it's never a waste of time just exploring ideas. At the very least, it's good practice for translating an idea into a visual media and kind of getting a feel for how much screen time a certain action will take, or how to build some momentum with your editing. It's all just practice, and it kind of it feeds into your overall skill set.
That's right. There's never lost energy when it comes to putting creativity into something real.
No.
Excellent. Okay. That's kind of beautiful. Yeah, I was talking here with Plebes earlier about one of your latest features, the one with the girl under the sea, and we were really thinking about the story because it wasn't a word spoken, it wasn't an agenda, but there was a very powerful message behind the story. So I wanted to go back to that inspiration of when you fall in love with the project. How do you flesh out your stories? How what's your process? What's your creative process to get your vision into the actual story to become something real? How do you make that spark real, pretty much?
I think spark is a really good way to describe it, actually. That with that particular project, I was approached by an agency in Manchester, and they had their client was MOAS, the migrant offshore aid station, and they were approaching local artists to submit a piece of artwork to highlight MOAS's activity during Refugee Week last year. And various studios around Manchester submitted posters or pieces of music or like an illustration. A few people did illustrations, and for me, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is always moving image. It's never really a still. I definitely think sequentially in terms of stories. And it was a terrible time that the brief came. I was so busy with other things, and I thought, okay, I'll sit for 10, 15 minutes, and I'll just see if anything occurs to me, anything comes to me. And I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't, and I could just sort of say, look, I'm sorry, I'm just too busy at the moment. But I started to get this. I started to get this image of people underwater. Obviously, it felt like a little bit of an obvious step at first, because a lot of the tragic events that happen when people try to cross bodies of water, obviously that's what MOAS is dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and it felt like something that it could be tricky to address. Might be a little bit kind of traumatic in some way for some people.
That's right.
But it just wouldn't go away, this idea of the people existing in an underwater environment and being really outside their natural medium, unable to kind of have a voice or move freely because of the weight of the water pressing down on them. So yeah, I just started to write down notes around that, really. Tried to pick a character that would be, more vulnerable than anyone else, even given that situation, which would kind of a young girl that's, still a kid, still relies on her parents to kind of to look out for her. Obviously, there's a lot of predatory influences around wherever there are vulnerable people looking to exploit people's weakness and kind of vulnerability. So the character seemed to fit, and I started to do a few sketches in Photoshop, and I was I was starting to get excited about the project. I could tell I wanted to work on that rather than the paid work that I should have been working on at the time. So it was one of those projects that just wouldn't leave me alone. I kept trying to think of a reason not to do it, and to kind of say, no, I haven't got time for this, but it wouldn't kind of go away. So in the end, we did it, and I think we did 4 or 5 renders for the actual deadline for Refugee Week, and then we agreed that there'd be like a 3-month production period to make the film off the back of that.
months is not a lot of full animation.
No, we had to be. I keep saying we as though I'm like a studio, but
Well,
me.
your skill set
Um,
seems like it. You're a one-man army at the moment.
yeah,
I understand it.
smoke and mirrors. So yeah, we had to. I had to kind of be pretty economical with the assets. Obviously, shallow depth of field and lots of volume fog helps to kind of localize the detail just to the areas you need. And yeah, I didn't really try and do anything too fancy in terms of assets. I just kind of used the tool sets that I've developed over the years to get some characters up and running. The only thing I did do outside of the usual process was to render this one in Blender. I knew I wanted to make my next film in Blender, but because of the short time scale on this one, I figured it wasn't the best time to be trying to learn all of um, the kind of disciplines of a new piece of software. So
There are a
I
few.
did the modeling and the animation and the rigging in Maya, exported Alembic caches, and then did the rendering in Blender with Eevee.
Stick to what you know to get the job done within the time limits.
A nice stepping stone because the previous film was all Maya. This one was Maya and Blender, and then the new one is all Blender. So it proved to me that it was definitely the right choice.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you coming into this world a little bit. Community is really, really hungry for professionals who've had a track record like this.
Yeah, and the community, to be honest, has been one of the best bits about coming over to Blender. My daughter started learning the geometry nodes with me at the same sort of time, and we went over to Beacon last year, and it was just amazing. It was so nice to just kind of speak to people, and it felt like a big family rather than, I'm used to dealing with, I'm not going to say names, but other corporations who make software, and there is no equivalent to the Blender community. But
That's right. So, with all your time managing a family, working your personal projects, working professionally with multiple clients, I assume, you also seem to manage a YouTube channel.
yeah. Well,
How are you doing this?
the YouTube channel is an experiment. I only started putting stuff up there a couple of months ago, and to be honest, you have to be quite careful. I think I did the vulture character, the for Deep Rooted Short, and I posted something on Twitter about just showing off the wings because I was really just impressed by how what short work Blender made of dealing with that, which has been a pain in other productions I've done. Um, and someone said, "Oh, it'd be nice to see a tutorial or a little walkthrough." So I thought, okay, yeah, I could do that and put something together. And before I knew it, I was suddenly making tutorials for geometry nodes and thinking about the next thing I was going to do in terms of, okay, what's the next tutorial going to be? And I really enjoyed doing them. It was great. But I made no progress on my film for about 2 months while I was doing that. So it made me realize that you can't do everything. You've got to kind of choose your priorities. So for the last month or so, I've been back fully in production on the film, and what I think I'm going to do is make a tutorial if and when something interesting comes up during production. I might even stream some of the kind of production stuff if there's an interesting thing coming up.
I would tune in.
But I don't think I'm going to be kind of searching around for topics to make tutorials on at the moment. Maybe in between films, that'll be a cool thing to do. Um,
So I
I
do
think,
think you're onto something, making content around the story and It's kind of
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. I mean, the caterpillar one, I ended up spending a really long time on that one, and that it's not even in the film. I'm probably going to put a caterpillar in the film now just because I've made one, but there was no need for that really. Just get and don't get me wrong, I love doing it. That's it only happens because I can't resist once I start messing around with geometry nodes. I just can't stop.
The statement here is true that you enjoy what you do.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, definitely. There's certainly no willpower involved. If I didn't love doing it, I wouldn't do it. That's for sure.
Really do need to. So we have a question by Slink here in the audience asking, why do you think Blender is a better choice or good alternative? Oh yeah. Why are you migrating it?
Um, well, the obvious thing is the price. Obviously, Maya costs a lot of money, and Blender doesn't. So that's the first thing I would say. If you're doing personal work, that's a massive consideration, especially like some of the work that people like 14, 15-year-olds are doing amazing work in Blender, which it doesn't necessarily happen in Maya because Maya's not available to those people. I mean, I know there are student licenses and things, but it doesn't apply to people like myself. And then the community is another big part of it. I think anything you make in Blender is so warmly received, no matter kind of level you're at or your kind of background or experience levels. It's just a very positive feedback loop that you get into, and it feels encouraging. It's easy to get that momentum that you kind of build on when someone says something nice about what you've made. And then, I mean, ultimately, it's just a great bit of software. I think the developers are really agile, and there's not the kind of weight of shareholders waiting in the wings for their kind of balance sheet. It's more about, oh, this would be cool, let's do it, and then the next month there it is in the software. And I love that about Blender, and that feels like 3ds Max and Maya used to feel back in the 90s, where it was just like, oh, this could be cool, let's do it. Whereas now the pace of change in those pieces of software is glacial because there's so much kind of legacy. They can't change anything in case it breaks
Everything
ILM's
else.
pipeline, and suddenly you've got a riot on your hands. It definitely
Millions of
feels,
dollars at play as well if something breaks.
yeah. And but as a user, you feel that you just feel that things get half implemented, and then personnel move on, and it gets kind of forgotten about, or there's a lot of features in Maya. I mean, there is a visual programming environment called Bifrost inside of Maya, which has been in there for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now.
Yes, I remember that. I
And
used
it's just,
to work with Softimage, and
yeah.
Bifrost was supposed to replace ice. It never did,
Well, yeah,
really.
Jonah, the guy that made Bifrost for Maya, who was one of the original ICE developers for Softimage, I
Yeah.
think while he was at PsyOp. So, yeah, best intentions, and it should have been a great thing, but it's just never felt finished or integrated properly with the software. Whereas with Blender, there seems to be a really holistic view of the software in terms of, if we're going to implement something new, it needs to sit in the ecosystem and interact with all the other parts of the software. Blender geometry nodes just seems so mature already, even though it's 18 months old, maybe less. And it obviously it's evolved a lot and it's changed as it's kind of come through the last few versions. But I'm really impressed just by how kind of willing the developers are to pivot and do what they think is going to be good for the software. So I think in the future, it's just going to keep getting better. And it's, I shouldn't really be sat here preaching about it because I'm a complete newbie to Blender anyway. So
it's probably some walls you need to hit before you start to become slightly better. We'll see. You'll get there. You'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm aware people have been saying, "Oh, you should try Blender for years and years and years," and it's not until you try it that you realise it really is a viable alternative now to lots of the biggest names in the industry. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. It did. Good. I have another question by Haley Twistup. He asked this question last week, but I would like to pitch it to you since you are the perfect person about this. So this question, I'm going to read it out. Is he's beginning to learn how to do vehicle modeling, but he asked a question about style, multiple styles. So I've noticed with your work with the commercials and short film, including Aardman, 2D painterly style or ink style, and flat stylized 3D animation, others. Is there any benefit to working with multiple styles? If so, how is there a benefit to do so? What would you recommend, specifically with something slightly more specialized with vehicle art? How would you apply style? How do you go around style?
It's a great question. I think you can worry too much about it, about kind of, you can get hung up on, I need to develop my own unique style. But I think if you consume lots of inspiration and influences from a really diverse kind of palette of things, not just animation, but art in general, nature, film, literature, as much as you can, and you'll start to kind of that you like, and the things that speak to you on a kind of emotional level will stick. They're the things that will stay in your mind and come to the surface when you're conceptualizing or developing a project. And I think because each of us is unique, the way you'll disassemble everything that you look at and then put it back together again will become unique to you. And as you kind of hone your skills and your craft, and consume more and more of the kind of inspiration around you, I think what will emerge is your style without you needing to kind of pre-plan it or kind of worry too much about it. I think obviously there's some of the projects you mentioned there, like the Aardman ones. I didn't design those characters. They've got a house style, and when you work for them, you'll be working in their style. I was given those models to rig, so I can't claim any credit for that style. I wish I could. But in terms of my own work, I feel like I've never really been particularly impressed, or I've never gravitated towards super realistic stuff or heavily detailed stuff. It's just not something that kind of speaks to me. So I've never really sought out that kind of work, and I don't try. And I guess being a one-man band, it doesn't. It's not really feasible for me to kind of pursue that photoreal look anyway. I need to find economy in the design and in the level of detail. Otherwise, I'd never get anything done.
Yes, I know that.
So I think, I've been doing this a really long time, and I've wasted a lot of that time thinking, oh God, I need to find a style. What's my style going to be? And then suddenly people are saying, oh, I like the style that you work in, and it's oh, okay, well maybe I do have a style after all. And I think it will come out the more you consume, and not just in a kind of passive way. I think that's quite important, is that when you're looking at things, it's important to ask if something speaks to you, why, what is it I like about that? Or the same as something, if you don't like something, quite often, if you have a strong negative reaction to something, you can learn more from that by asking yourself, what is it about that thing that puts me off or kind of leaves me cold?
Right.
Good. We have a comment from Plebes here. He says he loved your caterpillar tutorial. He's such a cute little fella. It was really nice to follow along, especially as someone usually animating with you. Really great to see such content with animation background and these convincing results. So not only are you capable with your artistic concept of transmitting your dream of a story and a spark onto paper, I notice you also have the paintings in the background there of your studio with some of the characters that you've created, drawn by hand, I assume. But
No, those are Photoshop. That was
oh, Photoshop. Okay, well, drawn with a mouse or a tablet, either way.
yeah,
And
those are my son. They're my son's designs when he was about 4 or 5. So we sat and did them on Photoshop a few
that's
years ago.
beautiful. That's good. So you've also got this streak of being a tech artist as well, with the rigging, with the geometry nodes. Extremely rare and highly valuable, really, as a disciplinary person. Which leads me to another question by I'm Kinda Drunk. How do you manage to not burn yourself in a project, burn out? Since your work is multidisciplinary, how or when do you decide where to explore a different idea? Either if it's drawing or geometry nodes or doing rendering and lighting, before you move along? How do you measure your energy?
It's a great question, and I think you almost answered the question in the question. I think the fact that I'm doing multiple disciplines on the same project gives you an opportunity, if you're feeling bogged down with, if you're sick of writing code and you've been writing code all week, it's nice to go and paint a background, and it feels like a rest because it's a change. It's a completely different headspace and a different set of reserves that you're calling on. So I think having the variety of disciplines, which all need to be worked on at some point, you can kind of pick and choose. If you're not feeling something on a particular day, just do something else. As long as you're making progress, that kind of feels good anyway. I think one of the most draining things in terms of your energy and burning out is when you feel like you're not getting anywhere. You feel like you're sitting in front of the computer and you should be making progress, but for whatever reason, it's just not going the way you hoped. That's really tiring. And usually, when you're in that situation, is a good time to think, okay, I'll park this. What else can I do? And just find something relaxing, put some music on, and paint some textures, or sometimes even like laying out UVs, which nobody would volunteer for normally. It can be a bit of like an autopilot thing where you can just say, okay, I'm going to put an audio book and I'm going to lay out UVs for a couple of hours. And then at the end of it, you think, oh, great, I don't have to do those UVs now, they're done. So you're kind of rewarding yourself by doing something that's of value to the project. And it's quite nice to save a couple of little things that you know you're going to enjoy. Like UVs are a great one because for me anyway, I always really like the texture painting process, but getting to that point is a pain. Doing the UVs is a pain. Getting everything exported and ready to go into Substance or whatever software you're going to use. So I quite like to save up a couple of nice texturing tasks or something like that, or if there's a really nice shot that the animation's not going to be too tricky, but it's going to be a fun one to do, just keep a couple of juicy treats available so that if you do kind of hit a low point and you feel like you need something to kind of rejuvenate you, you can dip into that little bag of treats and allow yourself something that you know is going to give you a good positive boost.
I love this hack.
But I mean, at the end of the day, doing this kind of work is time consuming, and there will be points where you hate it and you want to just kind of
have to push through anyway.
There's no, but I would imagine that's in any job, you know.
Yeah, the good thing with this job though is that you can have a nice special treat to do something that you like to do.
Yeah.
It's a very good hack, actually. I quite like that concept a lot. A few sessions back, we talked about making habits over the New Year's, how the brain requires a reward and a celebration, feel motivated to make the new habit. So your bag of treats is, it's the nail right on the head.
Yeah, I think I'd find it really hard if I was just animating or just modeling, and there wasn't that kind of side exit into a different kind of discipline, because the shifting gears and the shifting kind of headspace is really it is like pressing a reset almost. So I do appreciate that that aspect a lot of the time. It can be a nightmare if you've got a lot of switching about to do. It can work the other way as well. You know, if you're struggling to get some momentum and you've got to park some code that you've been writing to jump on and do a model fix for something, it can be difficult to change gears quickly sometimes if things are going well. So it can work both ways, but
that's true.
Trying to always stay on the positive side of it.
Yeah, I'm currently struggling with that one. I have difficulty finding the momentum when I'm changing a project or changing a task within a project or changing between multiple. Okay, so I have one last follow-up question before we take a look at the finished art. This has been extremely motivating, actually. The more I got to know about you, the more about your work, the more inspired and the more admiration you have from me too. But to go to the follow-up question concerning back to the style and your work as well with freelancing work and a job, you've managed to hold your family and to hold your career and hold your private projects with your work on the side. So with your own style and your skill, how does that complement your financial?
I mean, it's a constant balance, really. Sometimes you have to take projects that aren't as exciting, but they're going to be financially beneficial, and that stint of doing something that you might not be so excited about will pay down the line for a project that you'd like to take on that you are excited about that doesn't have the same budget attached to it. But I think in terms of doing the personal projects, they always, I mean, I always think they do earn money in a roundabout way, for me anyway. I don't really make show reels, and I don't really ever show my professional work. Whenever I'm talking to a prospective client or an employer, that they only ever seem to want to talk about the personal projects. And I feel like a lot of the work that has come my way over the years has been off the back of whatever the latest personal project is that I've been working on. That's always a talking point, and people can see that it's more than just a job to you. I think is a key part of it. They can kind of build a much better picture about you as an individual if you're showing them things that you've initiated yourself rather than you executing a vision on behalf of someone else. I mean, that's obviously an important skill as well, but I've definitely found the personal projects to be the main kind of way in. I definitely don't think I would have got a lot of the jobs that I've been trusted with over the years if I hadn't been doing that kind of work in my spare time. And it always comes down to that balance, is you can only dedicate so much time to it, but I guess if you want to be serious about it and build a career, you have to prioritize spending some time doing it, really.
Right. Good. Excellent. Ooh, okay, I have a question myself, and going back to you, film producer. Is
Sure.
there a sneak peek of the story, or will I have to wait till it's done?
I do have an onomatic, but I'm not planning to share that at this stage.
Yeah, that's okay.
Partly because the drawings are pretty much unintelligible to myself. But I'm planning to put out a teaser, like a vertical slice, where I can show the environment fully rendered and a couple of the assets in the scene, because I need to make sure I can actually pull it off for myself, really, before I get too far down the line. So there will be a teaser, which will probably end up being the first handful of shots from the film. I think the film's maybe 6 or 7 minutes long. It's a bit longer than some of the other ones I've done, but it's quite slow paced. It's very kind of relaxed in terms of pacing. So I reckon 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 2 months. I'll probably put out a teaser.
I can't wait. Once it comes out, I will try to showcase it.
That would be very kind. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so before just to give you a bit more context about this community here, the B for Artists is actually a fork of Blender. So you mentioned earlier that the development of Blender is really agile and things like that. Well, me and a couple of other friends of mine, we developed a fork, changed the interface to be a lot more like Maya, or a lot more like software where you have lots of iconography, left click, right click to rotate, and things like that.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Hashtag not sponsored. But it's completely, it's a volunteer project, man. It's one of those that I'm also very passionate about, and that's kind of my in-house tool that I use to work my.
And did that come from a need that you felt to kind of customize the interface for your own development?
Yes, because my history was I started with TrueSpace, and then I worked with Softimage for 5 years, and then went EOL by you know who, and then I got into Blender, and I was in there for about 3 years, but I felt stunted compared to how I was with Softimage. But then I met a developer who used to use TrueSpace, and then started developing B for Artists, which immediately clicked with me because everything being accessible in a top level in panels, and the tool shelf up here at the top, everything with an icon consistently, and other little tweaks and changes. It really vibed with me, which helped me save time. Just less clicks, a bit easier.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But with that, we also like to create art. So one of the pieces of art that we've done by the community, let me up, take a look together. I'd love to hear your opinions and your side. So first pieces that we're going to take a look at is by Mr. Crusader, which we showcased last week. But he has also been sharing one of his first pieces and now his current project, where he's creating a portal and a number of hallways. So just back and forth. So he's created a number of different hallways. He's working with some sound design. I wanted to see if you could think of a story or think of this this paradigm, the set of parameters within the story. Where would you take it personally? You have hallways, you have ghost sounds floating around, you have a portal, similar to the Portal game. Where would you take it?
I would take it definitely somewhere creepy. It feels like a bit Kubrick-esque. Like there's some twins around the corner just standing there waiting when I go around on my bike. I love the idea that there's these like deserted spaces which are connected by some kind of doorway or portal, I don't know. Sorry, what's the artist's name?
Mr. Crusader.
Mr. Crusader. Okay, well, I don't know if you're intending to populate the hallways at all, but I'd be tempted not to. I really like the kind of emptiness of them.
I think he is keeping it empty with intention.
And are they intended to be explorable spaces, or are you going to present them in a linear like a film format?
This
It
will
looks like
be, yeah, it might be a linear format, possibly, but this looks like a set of questions that I will have to invite Mr. Crusader to answer in the future.
it looks like a perfect sort of VR candidate.
Right.
Yeah, maybe it's like inside the mind of a character, and these are memories, or
Trying to reach out, or he's trying to get out, or he's lost in
brainstorming now. But yeah, maybe they're trying to fight their way back to consciousness after an incident, or I don't know. There's something really like powerful about the empty hallways.
Great.
I think that the bottom left one with the plants is actually, although it's the most sort of technically detailed one, I find myself drawn to that one less than the others for some reason. And I think it is just the kind of desolate nature of them. Like we've all been in those spaces, and they're a bit weird.
Yes, that's true. It's an interesting evolution by Mr. Crusader as well. It's like this was one of his first renders that he mentioned this week. So he started with this tribute to the Portal game, but
Yeah.
then he's taken it to another tribute, another pathway, I guess another hallway of his art style. So last week we interviewed Hyman Mueller, and he has been working with the game as well. In the last episode we looked back at it, but this week he actually finished this as well. So you mentioned earlier with your art style that you like to economize and minimize and keep your details relatively clear. I wanted to see to kind of avoid the cost of realism. So Timon also seems to do this with a kind of a kit bashing way that we talked about last week. So what do you think?
I really like it. It's what I love about it is that if I like sit back and squint, it's got a really clear shape, like a silhouette that's appealing straight away. And then the closer you get, you start to see the surface details, but they're all in support of that initial shape. There's no element on there that doesn't look like it belongs to me. And there's a really nice mixture of like small, medium, and large shapes. It just feels like a really balanced, pleasing
Design, really.
there's something a little bit organic about it as well. I always see faces in cars and vehicles and stuff, and this one feels like, I don't know, a little character of some description. I think maybe the view that we're looking at it from as well, it feels like maybe it feels quite vulnerable somehow.
Vulnerable
Quite
character.
cute.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not usually the angle that you see vehicles presented from, is it? You usually get like a heroic, low angle, kind of wide angle shot. No, I really like it. And it looks just totally plausible.
Right, Nemo's actually here in the chat next.
Sure.
Where's it going directly to him? That's great. We also got another submission by Slink, who has been, ever since the beginning, Slink has also a young artist who's starting out. He's working his way through. Anima says, thank you for your kind words. We like that a lot. So Slink has been with me through these Q&As quite from the beginning, and he's been sharing his art and progressing along. So if you look inside the Q&A and critique chat, we have 6 pieces But the one piece that I've been wanting is one of his recent pieces I have not seen. Lighthouse.
Oh, cool.
So he's been working with trees, lighting, composition, better focus, and also effects. Been working on these pieces. So
Yeah, it looks really like polished.
it's quite
It looks, yeah, like a really well finished image. Nice. Yeah, it's almost not there in places. I really like the fact that there's a lot of like breathing space, and then it's really interesting that the focal point's right on the edge of the frame, the kind of the brightest point's right on the edge. So you kind of your eye goes there first, but then I'm noticing the one sort of dark window on the lighthouse. I'm trying to, imagine like there must be a really dark stairwell going up to that lighthouse. Like without the window, you wouldn't get any of that. But it's really nice that it gives you the way in to start thinking about who might live there and what are they doing right now.
I really love how you take your adventure into the actual story of the image, what we're about. Excellent.
Well, it's the image gives that to me. It's like Slink chose to put that window on there, and like without it, you wouldn't get any of that. So
Exactly.
it's telling me what to say, really. No, it's cool because I think as well the temptation would be to have like spray and a big wave kind of. I'd be tempted. I'm pretty sure I would have like filled up all that empty space at the bottom with a wave crashing up against the lighthouse, And I like the fact that it's not about that. It feels more about the lighthouse itself, and there's a lot more mystery to it, given the breathing space in the image. Great job.
It's good. So, going back to the question about the shuttle, Nemo has also mentioned the observation about the character was an interesting one. He does think that the nacelles looked a bit like legs at one point, with different angles. And then we have a last-minute submission by Andromeda. He's been working with this character named Doc. Andromeda actually is not going to ruin the big surprise, but I am. She's going to be a special guest in the near future, hopefully.
Cool.
And I've met her when she was starting out with her work in the space. And I've also had the honor to work with her for some time. A little bit. Some modeling. And she has been developing a universe, and she runs this very unique YouTube channel, Dream Journals. With that, she has developed her original content, her original stories that she writes down and turns them into a bit like an audiobook and illustrates them with some moving images. And she has been developing this character for a number of months now. So this is Doc. Just load up Doc. So we're going to hear more about her work in the near future, hopefully. But let's see. I would like to see Andromeda. If you actually, what do you have a question for Duncan at the moment about this character?
No, just what does he think? Because
Alright.
I've been working on it really hard, and I would actually like some feedback from someone who has made, animation and all of that.
Right, feedback. Great.
Amazing character. I've not really ever seen anything like it before. I love I guess it's like, is it knitted, like a knitted fabric feel that you're going for?
Yeah, I started with something else, but I didn't like it that much, so I was like, maybe he's kind of a toy, But I mean, he's not a toy in his world, but I like to see him as a toy.
Yeah,
But he's not. He that's not his personality. You know, he has a different personality from what he actually looks like. So I don't want you to get those things mixed up.
that's interesting. A lot of the time, you design a character as a kind of an external projection of their personality. But like, I'm seeing this guy in a different light now. If you're telling me that this is some kind of camouflage, is he trying to hide something or give off mixed messages?
Not mixed messages, but I think people are like this, like him. Like you're not like what you look in the outside most of the time. You're like what you're inside, you know? But I want him to look beautiful and approachable, even though his personality may be a little bit complicated. But he's not like bad, or neither bad or good. He's just, you know, kind of like humans, you know? Does that make any sense?
I love the like this eye mask. It feels like you're almost seeing into what he's thinking. Like it's like an imagination projected onto his face almost. I think what I would say, like one thing you could maybe think about is if you're going to go for like a knitted texture on the surface, is to try and have the texture just push the details around a little bit, so they look like they're in the fibers rather than sort of laid on afterwards. Does that make any sense? So you get a little bit of displacement from the actual knitted threads to kind of just disrupt the pattern a little bit, so that it feels more part of the material that he's made from.
Make it uneven, you mean?
I guess what you would say is, like, for example, if you have a piece of string and you design the cloud from the string, you would, on the knitting, instead of painting the knitting with an ink, you would actually weave it into the texture.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a like amazing character. There's so much kind of visual information there. What's the rest of the character like? Is it bipedal, and is it a full character?
I think I have. Let me see if I have another picture. Let me look for it real quick.
Yes, there's also an Instagram account that of this character that was recently created, correct? Oh, Andromeda must be. Well, we'll know more about Andromeda's universe in the next episode or after.
Yeah, I have an Instagram for him.
Oh, this is one of my favorite people.
But that's a mix of someone else's character, because there's this comic book from this artist, and I thought it was so cool, and I thought, oh, Doc could be like a superhero, so, but he's not. But in his imagination, he could be, you know, like when you look up to some superheroes in comic books, you're not a superhero, but you would want to be, you know.
That's how you see yourself, yeah. I love those ears. They could be really expressive.
Yeah.
I also have some other work that doesn't look like this, a little bit more dark, but yeah.
I guess we will see more of this next time that we talk with you, Andromeda. So you're the sneak peek special guest of the future. So thanks for sharing this. We have
thank you.
Alright, so we've now hit 1 hour here, Duncan. So I just want to say thank you everybody for connecting today here in the Discord server. Also thank you for sharing your insight about your history, your story, your work, your art, how you manage it, how you do it, how you mix it up and keep your motivation high with the sweets and the treats. I'm very inspired. Look up to you for everything you've done, your track record, being also the family man, keeping it going, doing it through freelancing, juggling the things and keeping it multidisciplinary, but also keeping the art real, story, true, that spark focused. I'm very thankful for the time. Thank you everybody for your questions.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Okay. I hope to see more of your work. I'm keeping my eye out for your future trailer. And
Likewise.
hopefully we can have you back here sometime in the future when you release the short film. Who knows?
Well,
Get it
yeah,
done.
some unspecified date in the future.
Yeah, who knows? Okay, well, I'm going to leave the stream here. If you'd like to be featured here in the future, or if you'd like your art to take a look at, join the Beef Artist over, share your art. Get in touch with me if you'd like to be a part of this in the future as well. Keep your questions coming. Any questions you have for the special guests of the future, we'll discuss it. And I will see you next Friday, same time, same place. Have an excellent